Okay, so let's start the reel and let me introduce today's panel session, the creation of the textbook titled English for 21st Century Skills with Sofia Mavridi, who is a lecturer in learning technologies and English language teaching at the Montfort University in the UK. Daniel Xerri, who is a senior lecturer in TESOL. George Kokolas is the academic director and teacher trainer for Express Publishing. He's also a certified advanced neurolanguage coach, the co-host and producer of the internationally successful podcast Teachers Coffee, and the senior editor columnist for the Neurolanguage Collective magazine. Now, the panel would like to ask that you keep your questions until the end of the presentation. We will be checking the chat box and we'll ask you to raise your hand digitally to speak. Please give everyone a chance to ask questions at the end. Of course, we do have also the Easter egg mentioned that will be done at the end of this session. Please make sure to write everything down so that you can be in the running for the win. And may I ask you finally for a round of applause for our panelists. Please unmute your mics. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. All right. And please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Kinzela. If I may say, and Ria is here as well, we have made an arrangement, a special arrangement for this panel to last for 45 minutes. We will play it by ear, okay? If we have some extra time later on, we can actually extend more than that, but so far we have been preparing this for 45 minutes. So I don't know if there is any problem finishing a little bit earlier. But maybe Ria, who is the coordinator here of the whole conference, can actually confirm that. But anyway, let's start this conversation, and maybe we will need 75 minutes. Who knows? Maybe we are, in the flow.
Good to go, George, as you like.
Thank you so much, Ria.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Excellent. So it's a great pleasure to be here and coordinating this panel. I think you said too much about me in that bio, Kinzela. I think the most important thing and the spotlight today should be in our guests, because I have a small personal story with them, and this book was actually born, the idea, and the first, let's say, seed was put during the IATEFL in 2019, when Daniel and Sophia came to find me, and they talked to me about this amazing idea of this wonderful book. And of course, back then, 21st century skills still was a buzzing topic, a very interesting topic. So Express Publishing, from the perspective of the editor, found it a wonderful idea. And so far, the response that this book has received, and of course, yeah, the sales as well, if I may say, proved in a way that we made the right choice and we did the right thing. So, however, apart from the commercial aspect here today, we are so to discuss about 21st century skills. I think it's maybe the hottest right now topic around the world. I think it's a topic that touches and changes education, affects a lot, many syllabi in many different schools. And I'm very proud to have here the experts to talk about this. So today, as an overview, we're going to talk about 21st century skills in depth and in breadth, I would say. We talk a little bit about the book. And most of all, we'll have the chance to enjoy these two great specialists who can give us maybe the pulse of what is going on right now regarding 21st century skills in the education all over the world. So Daniel and Sophia, it's a great pleasure to have this chat. Excellent. Okay, I will start with the basics. And my first question is, at the end of the day, what are the 21st century skills for English language speakers, and why would they be so useful for learners of today? As an introduction to today's topic.
Yeah. Shall I go ahead, Daniel? You? Yeah, okay. So, yeah, I agree with you that this is the basic question, because there is some discussion around the term. We use the term skills in its broader form, I would say, to include competencies, literacies, and values that 21st century people, all of us, and our students, of course, need, not to just survive or to get through, but also thrive in our world. And our world is very, very complex. We offline and online and hybrid, especially during and after the pandemic. So we are talking about of course, the 4 C's: creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, communication, the 4 C's, everybody knows that. But then there are other literacies and competencies like inclusion, equity, well-being, leadership, sustainability, resilience, and of course, digital literacies, media literacies, visual literacy. Kieran Donaghy had plenary yesterday, no, 2 days ago. So, and if someone wanted to play devil's advocate, for example, they might ask, why do we need to talk about 21st century skills? We are 21 years into the 21st century. So why do we still need to talk about 21st century skills? Because these are skills, we should talk about skills. So I think that in theory, the notion is generally accepted that we should be talking about collaboration and that education should be about inclusion, etc. So I think that in theory, educational systems have accepted the notion, but in practice, I think that many educational systems still try to solve 21st century problems with 20th century solutions. And taking a look at some curricula and assessments today, I think is enough to confirm that. So we need to move on from conceptualizing 21st century skills to actually integrating them. I don't know if Daniel wants to.
Yeah, I fully agree with you, Sophia. We also have to remember that when the term was first coined at the end of the 20th century, people were using it to refer to the skills that students, employees require in the future. The way we're using it and the way we talk about it in our book is a combination of present and future concerns. We're very much living in the future that people at the end of the 20th century were looking at. But now we are underscoring the value of developing a variety of different competencies and skills and dispositions that will enable our learners, whether they are learning English, but also if they're learning other subjects. Let's not forget that these skills are not just tied to one particular subject, whether it's English or something else, and enabling them to face a future, but also a present, and Sophia pointed out when she alluded to the global pandemic, a reality that is characterized by volatility, by uncertainty, by complexity, and by ambiguity. And hence, if we equip our learners with these skills, we will make them ready for each one of those components of the VUCA world. Here I'm repeating myself perhaps a bit from this morning's plenary. But developing these competencies really enables all of us, teachers, learners, but any citizen within society, to respond to challenges that we're facing in the present and that we will continue facing in the future, whether it is in our professional life or in our personal life. It might also make us more successful learners, more successful professionals, more successful people, more successful citizens.
Yeah.
You know, by listening to you, I immediately get the idea that maybe here we have the following sociological maybe phenomenon. Instead of education being prepared to prepare students or even us teachers for what they're going to face out there in the market or real life, it seems now that the pressure came from real life, so education to change. So that's the way I perceive this from what you say. And this in a way may be creating an extra stress to the teachers. How could they possibly include in their everyday teaching these skills? And obviously this may require as well a change regarding the syllabi or different programs of study. So how the teacher of today, every day, can integrate these skills into their teaching? What could we possibly say to them so to get them implemented in practice?
Yeah.
So
Go ahead. Yeah.
Let me address George's point about education responding to social pressures, perhaps. And that's a very valid point. When we think of education, some people criticize education for being very slow to adapt to social realities. We still speak of the factory-based model of education. It's as if other domains within society, within social life, have adapted, have provided people, citizens, with customized solutions, but education still is being delivered very much in the way that it was delivered 100 years ago, 150 years ago. Why is that? People like, for example, Clayton Christensen at the University of Harvard worked quite a lot on the concept of disrupting education and making sure that education becomes something that is providing learners with customized solutions. But we're still very far away from disrupting education to that extent. And to answer your question about what we can do in our everyday teaching in order to make sure that these skills are being given the importance that they deserve, I think for me personally, it all starts from the learning outcomes. If we see ourselves as people who are only responsible for teaching a language, teaching the skills and teaching the systems, then we're going to only focus on learning outcomes that have a language focus. But perhaps we also need to make sure that we have two different sets of outcomes here. Outcomes that have a language focus and outcomes that have a global skills focus. And a good example of this I encountered in a book edited by Nick Peachy and Alan Maley a few years ago. I contributed a chapter to this book. It focused on enabling teachers and learners to engage with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals via creativity. And the brief for us who wrote chapters for this book was that we should not only have language foci in terms of the outcomes, but we should also focus on creativity outcomes. And that is something that I feel is also important for all those of us interested in merging our role as language teachers with our role as holistic educators, educators of things that are beyond language, and merging the two together, combining them in that way.
Sophia, any comment on that, or?
Yeah. I'm thinking. Yeah, you got thinking.
Daniel's statement was quite powerful. That statement that he made. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. So I was thinking how much I agree, and what I can add to all this. I mean, I think he said it all. I think that, referring to the book, what we propose, Daniel and myself and all the authors who have chapters in the book, English for 21st Century Skills. So what we propose is a paradigm shift where language learning does not only have students, help students with the linguistic skills, but also contributes in shaping them for the present and the future. So to answer the question, 21st century skills often, wrongly in my opinion, appears as an add-on So all the reality, as Daniel said, is to embed, to merge. So to embed in the syllabus. So teachers don't need extra time as such, because there is no extra time. Syllabi are already very busy, and teachers are asked to do, to go the extra mile every day. So we need to integrate them via project-based learning, collaborative learning. There are many practical ideas in the book. So depending on the skills, there will be a different pedagogical approach. But for Daniel and myself and all the authors, 21st century skills pedagogies need to be embedded in what we do. So having said that, there are many practical ideas in the book about how to integrate these skills into existing curricula without totally redesigning the whole syllabus. So for example, yesterday I gave in my plenary, I talked about filmmaking, and I shared a framework on how we can embed filmmaking into our teaching. And how filmmaking can help students to develop language skills, but also digital literacies, media literacies, critical thinking, and so on. So we may not need a whole new curriculum from scratch, but we do need to adapt to adapt to new approaches and adopt new activities, as Daniel said. Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. But you see, the way I'm listening to both of you right now, and I'm 100% pro and for these ideas, the way I perceive it as a simple teacher is the following. Right now, we have two facts. Okay, we have the first one, pressure from, let's say, the market, the society. We have an educational system that needs to adapt in this. We have, from what you propose, not simply an idea, but a reality for a total radical reconstruction of education. And in the middle of this, we have the students and the teachers. So obviously you talked to me about the needs and the syllabus, but as a professional, the teacher, how can he be trained to face this challenge? Because we're not talking anymore about some ideas from some respectful authors. We are talking about a reality. And I think this is the most alarming, in a way, thing for a teacher when he listens to all these ideas. And most probably the majority of us would like to contribute and do something about it. So as a teacher, how do I get trained deeply and seriously regarding 21st century skills, so to actually integrate them into my teaching? What would be the proper training? Obviously, apart from getting and reading your book, which is amazing.
I would say that there is a lack of robust teacher training or teacher development programs addressing 21st century skills holistically. And although there are regularly, we see 21st century skills, not in the book only, but in general. So as you said, it's a buzz topic and term. So they're regularly included in school curricula, university goals, 21st century skills, soft skills. So the truth is that many teachers are unsure, as you very well said, George, are unsure how to teach and how to assess, because it's not only teaching, it's also assessing. We should not forget that. So, the book will give teachers, of course, practical ideas, but for policymakers and for managers and curriculum designers, I have to say something. We cannot expect teachers to figure out everything on their own. Teachers need assistance, they need support, they need training, appropriate guidance. So we do need to provide teachers with clear guidance, clear training, support and ideas. Having said that, as we all mentioned, the book will give, directions and many practical ideas. There, for example, in the book, how can we make our reading more creative? How can we teach critical thinking via reading? There is a chapter for that. Or when we use songs, how can we make these activities more 21st century, towards more 21st century pedagogies, etc. So the teacher, of course, for their professional development, they can read excellent books like ours. There are other books as well. There are blog posts, there are conferences like this amazing one. But we cannot expect the teachers to figure out everything on their own, something that happened during the pandemic, for example. So most teachers learned how to teach online on their own. So it's not the first time. And I think Daniel mentioned that at the beginning with regards to what the teachers can do. Absolutely, they're very powerful. They are very resilient. They want to develop professionally, but policymakers, managers, teachers need support and guidance. So this is how I see it. I don't know what Daniel would like to add to this.
No, I would agree with you and George in saying that perhaps there are limited opportunities for teachers to actually receive training on how to combine the focus on language and the focus on global skills. I wouldn't generalize though, because I am aware of a number of teacher education initiatives from around the world that seek to do exactly that. Most often, though, these initiatives are local in terms of the focus, and they are very much dependent on the interest or the passion of an individual who feels that they want to bring about change in the community or the local teachers' context. I had the opportunity of being involved in some of these initiatives. For example, a few years ago, I delivered workshops on teaching creatively and teaching for creativity to teachers in Iceland. But those workshops happened because there was a teachers association led by an individual who believed in the value of equipping teachers with these competences. Despite the fact that these initiatives exist, though, we must not forget that there is a sad reality to this as well. And that is that teacher education doesn't always achieve its goals. For instance, a few years ago, I interviewed the director of an organization based in Sydney, the Sydney Story Factory, whose role is that of helping students, young people, to develop their writing skills outside of the classroom. And he told me that despite the fact that pre-service teachers receive support, they might be told how to teach more creatively, how to develop the learner's creativity. The reality is that when these pre-service teachers enter the classroom and become teachers, most of those ideas, most of those innovations get thrown out of the window as they're struggling to survive. And the support that they so require in the first 3 years of their teaching is absent, is missing. So yes, we need to do more with respect to equipping teachers with the knowledge and skills and competences that they require to teach these global skills. But let's not forget that it shouldn't just happen at pre-service level, but it needs to continue happening throughout a teacher's career.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. And I think one of the key concepts that I think it's a recurring pattern in all those panels and our panel as well is awareness. Creating more and more awareness among the teachers that these skills exist, that they are a must, might be the first step for them to seek look for or even put some pressure for some more serious training. And we need to say this very explicitly, because before I met you, my friends, I was completely not ignorant. I could hear about the idea, but this book can be even like a small course for beginners regarding 21st century skills, because within these articles, apart from the wonderful ideas, you can find so many other sources, so many other indicated paths that you can expand your knowledge. So it might be a really nice starting point to start with that before any other serious movement is made towards this training. But enough with teachers. What about the students? What about the students and how we can make them more aware about the 21st century skills and how useful they can be for them? Because I have a feeling that right now, since these skills are in the society, as Daniel said, these kids, these students, these even young adults or adults may be receiving these signals even from their everyday lives, that there is something more needed than knowing how to use the present simple or the past perfect. So how would you see this concept among students? Are they really aware about the 21st century skills and how useful they can be later on?
Once again, I wouldn't generalize. It's very difficult to answer a question of whether students are aware, because which students are we talking about, in which context, at which level, speaking which first language. So it's very difficult to answer your question, George. What is true is that various organizations on a global level, like the World Economic Forum, the OECD, McKinsey, Deloitte, as well as educational policymakers, to go back to what Sophia was mentioning, all of them have, for the past couple of decades, been underscoring the value of these skills and talking about the importance of actually making sure that young people are equipped with these skills. But despite the fact that there is a lot of discourse concerning these skills, whether it filters down to the students and the teachers is another issue. And if it doesn't, whose responsibility is it so that it ultimately ends up in the classroom and becoming a concern of the teachers and the students? Sarah Mercer and her colleagues in a recent report published by OUP talk about how English language teachers are in a way privileged because they can see this as their responsibility. They can make it part of their duties in order to teach and assess such skills. Despite the fact that Sarah talks about how we as English language teachers are privileged in doing this, let us not forget though that this is not just an ELT concern. The skills that we address in our book are transversal skills, and they should be the concern of all educators. And hence, it is everyone's responsibility that students become aware of them, and not only become aware of them, but are provided with ways of making them part of the repository of skills.
Yep. Absolutely, absolutely. So raising awareness is very, very important. Now, with regards to whether students are aware, I would agree with Daniel, of course, that we cannot generalize here. But my experience about my students, I teach young adults at the university, BA students, MA students, but I also train teachers who teach young learners, teenagers. So what I get from these experiences, and you may agree with me, is that students like and want our activities and our curricula and what we do in the classroom to speak to them in a language that they know. And by language, I don't mean English or Italian. So they enjoy it when the learning bridges the gap between what they do in the classroom and what they do or are going to do outside the classroom. So they might not use the term 21st century skills, and it is just the term. The thing is, what really matters is to understand the concept and the usefulness. So they might not use or perhaps understand the term, but they do want to develop these skills, and they do appreciate it when they understand that this is real, this makes sense when they learn something. For example, with regards to digital distractions, for example, which is part of digital literacies, okay? Because digital literacies is not just know how to click buttons, it is also values. So with regards to digital distractions and how we manage digital distractions in the classroom and beyond, it is a myth that young people are not concerned about the way technology is chronically distracting them. And I'm saying that with certainty because I teach these skills to my students. So when I integrate activities and projects around this topic, they're not just engaged, they are grateful. So, and students, adults in higher education, but also teenagers and young learners understand very well what real life is, and they want to see the relevance with real life. So when it is not relevant to them, they might find it boring or disengaged. So they don't have the terminology that we have, but I think that we can tell when they're interested and when they are appreciative. Yes,
Absolutely.
I think they often choose these topics themselves. Yeah, Ashley, yeah, I agree.
And what Ashley says, I think in a way reflects, without any intention of overgeneralizing, but maybe at a higher level, I think these students feel more this pressure or this need for having these skills. Obviously in primary, someone may be so pure and so innocent and they may not know what how these will be needed, but implementing them, I think it can give them a real nice anchor and see the English lesson from another perspective. And this leads me to the next question, which I guess in a way it's obvious, but I would like to stress this because there might be still teachers who say, look, I wasn't trained to teach 21st century skills. I'm here so to teach the linguistic competencies that we talked before. And maybe I don't want to go through this training. Okay, maybe, you know, it's after all, it's optional and I don't want to go down this path. However, wouldn't you say that, let me put it this way, is it possible for someone to practice all those skills at an international level in the international market without having achieved some decent levels of communication? I mean, how can I possibly collaborate with someone abroad without being able to speak fluent English or good English, or maybe expressive in my thoughts after a critical thinking process? So could this add up more value to the need for linguistic competence that, again, only can be fostered and promoted through an English lesson? Would you say that this happens?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the more competent linguistically, the more able we are to communicate, to collaborate, to think critically. So that's a given. And that's why we say English for 21st century skills. So English for 21st century skills should not be the same with 21st century skills. So it needs to be language specific for students who are learning English or another language, and they are not yet very competent or totally competent, or they might be beginners. So how can we achieve this in a foreign language? So often teachers read articles, books, school, goals, for example, that are general. They address general education. They may be great, but they are not for foreign language teaching. But I want to make a point here. So communication in English or in any language really is shifting. So it's changing. It is becoming increasingly multimodal. I said that in my plenary yesterday. Kieran said that in his plenary on Friday. So it is becoming increasingly multimodal. So our students need, and I'm referring to the linguistic skills, George, students need to communicate effectively in a multimodal way, via text, yes, but also video, audio, sound. So the world that we live in is becoming increasingly multimodal, and communication is becoming increasingly multimodal. And ELT has a key role here, because exposure to English is taking place via, text, sound, video, GIFs, GIFs. So all these have implications for the way we teach a language and how we define communication. So I don't know if I answered the question, but I think that our approach needs to be language specific, absolutely. So we develop the skills along with these literacies. But when we talk about linguistic skills and communication in a foreign language, this concept is shifting as well. So we should not be seeing communication as only text or sound, perhaps. Daniel, I don't know if you have anything to add here.
If I may, George, I would like to problematize your question because I see it a bit difficult. If we make the assumption that if I cannot speak English, then I cannot possibly collaborate with others or express my critical thinking, for me, that's difficult. Because we are assuming that monolingual speakers or non-native speakers of English lack the capacity for such skills. So that is not true, obviously. Just as, for example, Sophia pointing out that, yes, communication is becoming increasingly multimodal, but it's not only becoming increasingly multimodal for learners of English, it's becoming multimodal for speakers of all the world's languages. So let us not make that assumption, because it would be an assumption that is not based in fact, in evidence. The great thing, though, about English for 21st century skills is that they are transferable from one language to another. So the critical thinking skills that you might have developed prior to you becoming a speaker of English or a learner of English can further be developed while you're becoming a better communicator in English. So the book is addressed primarily at people who are teaching English to speakers of other languages. It is addressed at learners of English as a second or foreign language, without making the assumption that those people are coming to the learning of English and the learning of these skills with a blank mind. We're not making that assumption. We believe that we are adding on, building on what people who might be speakers of Maltese, people who are speakers of Greek, of Korean, already possess in the repertoire of global skills.
Yeah.
I would say that, Daniel, you did exactly the opposite. You did not problematize the question. You gave a very thorough reply. And I think this is what the listeners needed to, our attendees needed to listen right now, because you made a very clear specification of what is going on right now regarding maybe in the majority of the people's or students' minds regarding those two skills. Obviously, yeah, there might be a special role assigned, and maybe the fact that we are discussing this in an ELT conference says something about the validity or maybe the priority that we give as English language teachers to these set of skills. But this does not mean or does not exclude that these people may come to our classes having those skills possessed earlier from another source, maybe through their own native language. So it was an amazing, great point, and thank you. The next question may sound again a little bit naive, but I think since you're talking about beginners regarding 21st century skills, I think I want to clarify this. 21st century skills, soft skills. Is there any overlapping there? Are we talking about the same things? Because usually I listen to many experts talking about soft skills, usually in the context of ESP, which is professional English, marketplace, professionals, this kind of fields. Over to you, because I think many people and teachers might be confused regarding those two terms, which again may be too general, but at the same time, they may be merging somehow, somewhere.
What's true is that there are different definitions and the use of different terms. At the very beginning of this panel, Sophia did refer to that, the fact that in our book, we are being quite general in the way we look at these skills. The catch-all term that we come across in the literature is non-technical skills. And these comprise transferable skills, employability skills, enterprise skills, competencies, soft skills, personal attributes. More recently, the term global skills is being used, 21st century skills, etc., etc. So despite the fact that there are different definitions, there is also a lot of overlap. There are overlapping elements among all of these non-technical skills. And to answer your questions, soft skills is most often a term used by the business community. It refers to interpersonal or intrapersonal qualities that are needed by employees working for specific organizations. But those soft skills are also valuable for anyone else, for any citizen in whichever domain of society. So I don't see soft skills as being different from English for 21st century skills. Actually, if we look at the contents page of our book, we see that many chapters focus on soft skills. So I wouldn't say that there is a difference. I think that we should focus primarily on how these different terms used by different people coming from different backgrounds overlap. It's better to look at the similarities rather than the differences.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. I want just to add a slightly different dimension, although I totally agree with Daniel that it is what matters is the concept and not really the term. So I agree that very often they are used interchangeably. But if we want to be precise, yes, soft skills versus hard skills refer to non-technical skills. And as Daniel said, these skills are transferable across roles. So if you develop them at the university or even the primary school, you can transfer them to your workplace from entry-level roles to, I don't know, top level executives. Now, the slight difference here, as I see it, is that 21st century skills are more inclusive, if you know what I mean. So soft skills and 21st century skills may be used interchangeably, but to me, 21st century skills are more comprehensive and they can include both soft and hard skills. For example, I'll give you an example. So when students develop digital literacies, for example, and they learn how to remix, this is a hard skill. It's a technical skill, but doing it ethically, by crediting the sources, by avoiding plagiarism, is a soft skill. So I think that 21st century skills, if we want to be more accurate and go by the book, there is no binary here, if you know what I mean, soft skills and hard skills. So 21st century skills are more inclusive and they include the technical skills if they're needed and the ethical part, you know, the values, the competence part. Excellent. What do you think, Daniel? What do you think? Sorry, it's just, you know, something that...
I agree. Yeah. I agree.
Excellent. And our last question for today, I know that we have made several mentions in your book and maybe already the people know what this book is all about, but if I would ask you some final words about this creation, what would you have to say? We're talking about, of course, one more time, English for the 21st century skills from Express Publishing. And what can you tell us about this book?
Me? Should I go first?
Why not? Okay. Yeah. Come on, Sophie.
Okay. Okay, I love talking about the book, obviously. For those who haven't read it, it presents cutting edge, of course, theory and practice. And this is what I love about this book. It marries theory and practice and how we can integrate 21st century skills in the language classroom. We are blessed to have real gurus in the book like David Crystal, Sugata Mitra, David Noonan, Penny. So we are fortunate to have well-known ELT experts, as well as teacher trainers, teacher educators, practitioners, leaders from all around the world. So these authors explore how 21st century skills can be developed. And there are chapters by, as I said, David Crystal, Nikki Hockley, Michael Carrier, David Noonan, Penny Kieran Donaghy, Marisa Konstantinidis, Antti Hockley, Sarah Mercer, Angelos Bolas, so many more, Susanna Galante, and so many more. Daniel and myself have our own chapters there. So mine is on digital literacies and Daniel's is on leadership, and fantastic, very insightful chapter, I would say. So I think it would be a shame not to mention all of them. There are so many, and I can share the contents page later on, perhaps. I don't know. Daniel, do you want to add anything?
And since you mentioned the contents page, I think people who haven't yet bought the book or received a copy, what they need to be aware of is that the book is structured into two main parts. The first part focuses on the fundamental 21st century skills that we've been hearing about for many years now. Earlier, Sophia mentioned the 4 C's framework, for example. So we've heard about creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, and so on and so forth. But our book also focuses on those competencies, on those skills that can actually be transformative. So yes, digital literacies are highly important, but so is a person's ability to be inclusive, to lead a sustainable life, to adopt a position of leadership in the workplace or in society, to live in an environment that is interconnected and multicultural. All of these are addressed by the second half of the book, and which might not yet be fully present in other books.
Exactly. And yeah, exactly. So this is part 1 that Daniel is referring to, and this is part 2 with advanced 21st century skills. But you can see the variety, as Daniel said.
We can see really big, great names there, great professionals contributing to this amazing work. And congratulations to you both one more time. You know, I know that we have mentioned this many times, but this is an amazing book, and at Express Publishing, we are very, very proud for publishing it. On a second note, as I have put in the chat, the book is available through Amazon or through the international shop of Express Publishing, expresspublishing.co.uk. But since, you know, we're talking about an open market and there might be some imponderables or problems, in case you cannot find the book for a reason, you can always drop a line to me and I will make sure that you get a copy. Also, as Ria pointed out, we have given 5 copies as giveaways for a contribution to KOTESOL competitions. You have the Easter egg hunt, and there is another hunt that also Ria mentioned. So I hope that you will be among the people who will win one of these copies. And I don't know if you have any questions for our guests here, for the authors in the chat.
I don't have a question, but I would just like to extend a thank you. Can you hear me fine?
Absolutely, yeah.
I just want to give a very warm thanks again to the 3 of you for your participation, and also to Michael Free. Because of Michael, I got my hands on a copy of the book, and it quite influenced the structure of the event that we are attending, you know, inviting 3 speakers to be plenaries and then more, including this panel. So it's just been a great blossoming, and maybe part 2 could be 21st century skills in Asia.
Yeah, perhaps.
But we've had so many comments asking if we're going to have a lot more collaboration with the people who have been invited to this event. So please keep it in mind, and I hope that there is a lot of communication between all of the speakers as well as the attendees. And I just urge you to reach out and ask questions and engage with the material that they've shared. And once again, just thank you so much for taking the time to come be with us this weekend. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, exactly. It's been wonderful indeed.
Congratulations to Yuri as well, because I know very well that you have put a lot of effort and soul and so much positivity in this event, that it's really vibrant. And there are so many different talks, and I think it's a wonderful opportunity for training, socializing, even well-being, as we mentioned here, for the teachers. It's always a pleasure to interact with all those professionals and getting to know more and more people and new people. So thanks to you as well. Okay, many positive comments, as you can both see in the chat regarding this presentation. No questions. Questions were spot on, but thank you, because your explanations really thank you very much, Ashley. Really nice.
George is always asking spot on questions, always. He's a great guest and host always, and his questions are always spot on.
Thank you so much. Thank you. But you had all the answers as well, so I know to whom I'm asking all these questions. So it's a win-win always. Okay, excellent.
May I ask everybody to please offer a big round of applause to our panelists today. Please unmute your mics. Thank you so much, George, Sophia, and Daniel. Thank you very, very much. Very insightful.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions or any more comments that we can share with our panelists? We still have a little time, a lot of time. Okay, then may I steal a little bit of your time and just make a short announcement?
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, so thank you very much to our panelists and panel leader. I would like to announce the Easter egg. The final Easter egg for today is egg 7, inside out. So one more time, that's egg 7, inside out. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. And I hope you will join us for the closing ceremony and the Non-Student Film Awards later on today at 6:30. Please join Discord for further discussion and perhaps contact with our panelists. Thank you again from the heart for your wonderful panel, and please have a lovely day. It's early where you are. So.
Thank you. You too. All the same. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.